Good evening. Earlier this month on Eid, it was India that was accused of unprovoked firing. On Diwali, Pakistan has been shelling across the border. As the standoff continues, a solution seems elusive. Welcome to the news tonight. I'm Zakir Jacob. Up first, as always, the headlines that we're tracking. The Pakistani Parliament passes a resolution seeking UN intervention in the Kashmir issue. India hits back, accusing Pakistan of multiple ceasefire violations. There's no end to the suspense in Maharashtra, but voices within the Shiv Sena suggest the party could end up supporting the BJP. Uddhav and Modi could meet on Saturday. The Communist Party of China concludes its fourth plenum with a series of legal reforms, but this is amid claims of Beijing tightening its grip on Hong Kong. And New York gets its first case of Ebola. A doctor is diagnosed with the virus, but officials say there is no need to panic just yet. So just as people were bursting crackers across this country on Diwali, the Pakistani Rangers were firing from light automatic weapons across the international border. Hundreds of miles away in Islamabad, Pakistan's elected representatives trained their guns on India. They unanimously passed a resolution against what they called unprovoked and indiscriminate fire by India. They even asked the government to seek the United Nations intervention to resolve the Kashmir issue.
On Thursday, while Prime Minister Narendra Modi was meeting the Indian Jawans on the world's highest battlefield, his Pakistani counterparts' team were piloting a resolution blaming India for warmongering. Nawaz Sharif's advisor Sartaj Aziz moved a resolution in the Pakistani National Assembly blaming India for the ceasefire violations on the border. It also appealed to the international community to take notice of the situation. The resolution asked the Pakistani government to raise the Kashmir issue at the United Nations and with the international community at the earliest. The 371-member assembly unanimously adopted the resolution. India reacted to the Pakistani aggression, with Home Minister Rajnath Singh articulating a tough stand on national security.
मैं पाकिस्तान के हुक्मरानों से कहना चाहता हूं, कृपया सीज फायर वायलेशन को रोकें और संयुक्त राष्ट्र संघ के इंटरवेंशन की बात पाकिस्तान की नेशनल असेंबली ने प्रस्ताव पारित करके यह कही है, संयुक्त राष्ट्र संघ को कहा है कि इसमें हस्तक्षेप किया जाना चाहिए। मैं समझता हूं कि परस्पर बातचीत के द्वारा यदि कोई समस्या है तो उसका समाधान हो सकता है।
Defense experts and national leaders also slammed the resolution by Pakistan, calling it meaningless.
I don't think we should take it very seriously, because they have been doing it, they have been raising this issue in United Nations or any international forum. We have seen it, be it Islamic Conference Organization. It has no impact.
As long as we don't talk to Pakistan, so long as this meaningless firing across the LOC takes place, killing Jawans and killing innocent civilians, so long as tension is allowed to grow, I am afraid this kind of thing is going to happen. It's a meaningless resolution.
It's unable to recognize what's happening within its own country, whether its economy which has collapsed, whether the kind of security situation where citizens die every day, where young girls are shot for wanting to study in school, where health workers are shot for doing their work. Yet Pakistan, the government of Pakistan, disregarding all this, is single-purpose-mindedly only working on trying to internationalize the Kashmir issue.
The anti-India resolution by Pakistan contradicts Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's claims of starting a dialogue between both countries. The latest development marks a new low in the relations that have gone from bad to worse in the last few months due to border hostilities. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
So as Pakistan blamed India for the continuing ceasefire violations, India hit back strongly. Home Minister Rajnath Singh said that it was Pakistan which was responsible for violations both along the international border as well as the line of control. He also said that Pakistan should know that Indian forces possess the capability to give a befitting reply during any misadventure. He also disapproved of Pakistan's move to approach the United Nations, saying that all issues can be resolved through bilateral talks.
मैं पाकिस्तान के हुक्मरानों से कहना चाहता हूं, कृपया सीज फायर वायलेशन को रोकें और संयुक्त राष्ट्र संघ के इंटरवेंशन की बात पाकिस्तान की नेशनल असेंबली ने प्रस्ताव पारित करके यह कही है, संयुक्त राष्ट्र संघ को कहा है कि इसमें हस्तक्षेप किया जाना चाहिए। मैं समझता हूं कि परस्पर बातचीत के द्वारा यदि कोई समस्या है तो उसका समाधान हो सकता है।
Meanwhile, the Prime Minister concluded his Diwali visit to Jammu and Kashmir, spending some time with Indian soldiers in Siachen, as well as visiting Srinagar, where he met with both political leaders as well as flood victims. In the process, he also announced a package of 745 crores for relief and rehabilitation. But as soon as he announced it, the Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir, Omar Abdullah, called it a pittance, a fraction of what it would take to rebuild the state.
On the world's highest battlefield in the Himalayan region, Prime Minister Narendra Modi spent his first Diwali in office with the troops.
हर पल एक ही मंत्र को लेकर के अपनी जिंदगी देशवासियों की खुशी के लिए आप न्यौछावर कर रहे हैं।
Since 1984, 10,000 to 20,000 Indian and Pakistani troops have been facing each other in the Siachen Glacier. India controls the heights at altitude of over 20,000 feet under temperatures of -60 degrees Celsius.
विश्व में कहीं पर भी इतनी कठिनाइयों वाला क्षेत्र नहीं है। विश्व में कहीं पर भी -30, -40 डिग्री टेम्परेचर में मातृभूमि की रक्षा के लिए अपने आप को तैनात रखने का सौभाग्य विश्व में किसी को नहीं मिला है और आपने इसे उजागर करके दिखाया है।
The visit was not without its share of controversy. At his next stop in Srinagar, Modi announced immediate release of the 1,000 crore rupees relief he had announced earlier. In addition, he also released an assistance of 745 crore from the Prime Minister's Relief Fund. He said the government could transfer the amount directly to the flood victims' bank accounts.
It is good that the Prime Minister claims to be doing social work in J&K. Only I would request that everybody ensures, including the Prime Minister, that this is not a vote-getting electoral exercise.
Modi met political leaders, flood survivors and civil society activists for nearly half of the day. Modi said the central government was fully committed to the rehabilitation and reconstruction work.
Prime Minister, fortunately in this country we have a Prime Minister who is humane, who has feelings for the people of this country. And if he decided to join the sorrows of people in Jammu and Kashmir, I think he's a Prime Minister of this country and he has taken a call.
Most shops were shut in Srinagar, which observed a bandh to protest against the visit. During his visit, Modi also met many flood-affected people, although quite a few complained that they were not allowed to go inside the Raj Bhavan. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And the state government of Jammu and Kashmir, in fact, saying it needs more than 40,000 crores to try and rebuild in the aftermath of the recent floods there in Kashmir. Meanwhile, some hard political stories, and in Maharashtra, the suspense over government formation in the state is far from over. Remember, it's been 5 whole days since the results, and now there's more drama. Initially, there were media reports that the suspense may finally get over when Shiv Sena President Uddhav Thackeray attends the Prime Minister's Diwali dinner. That dinner is scheduled for Sunday. But now the Prime Minister's office has clarified that that dinner is only for NDA members of Parliament and an invite was never given to the Sena President in the first place. But there is another twist to the tale. There is a possibility of both leaders meeting in Mumbai on Saturday when the Prime Minister visits the financial capital.
It has been 5 days since results of the Maharashtra Assembly polls were announced. But a final decision on government formation seems far off still. With 122 seats in hand, it's clear that BJP will lead any government that's formed. But there is no clarity on whose support it will seek to reach the halfway mark. However, back-channel talks are on and mediators claim there will be a solution soon.
उद्धव जी ने भी बताया कि भाई हमको मैं पूरा कोऑपरेशन करने के लिए मैं तैयार हूँ। मैंडेट बीजेपी शिवसेना का सरकार बनाने का ही है, तो जरूर मतलब उनके तरफ से पूरा सहयोग किया जाएगा। कितने मंत्री पद लेना है, कौन सा पोर्टफोलियो लेना है, इस पर फैसला 2 दिन के बाद हो जाएगा।
Sharad Pawar's NCP, which was first off the block, extending outside support to the BJP, is keeping its options open.
मैं समझता हूँ कि भारतीय जनता पार्टी एक राष्ट्रीय पार्टी है और अपना सोच समझ के अपना फैसला करेगी। हम लोग इतना ज़रूर चाहते हैं, एनसीबी चाहती है कि जो भी सरकार बने वो स्टेबल हो, महाराष्ट्र के हित में काम करे, वहाँ की जनता के हित में काम करे।
The Congress meanwhile has accused both BJP and Shiv Sena of being greedy for power.
सत्ता की दौड़ है, सत्ता के लिए लड़ाई हो रही है, विचार से कोई वास्ता नहीं है। वो राजनीतिक दल जो कल तक कहता था कि भारतीय जनता पार्टी अफजल खां की पार्टी है, आज वो दोनों सत्ता के लिए एक साथ आने को तैयार हैं।
The final decision is expected in next 2 to 3 days. But sources say the newly elected BJP legislators in Maharashtra may meet on Monday to elect their leader and the next chief minister of the state. Vishal Dahiya, Rajya Sabha TV, Delhi.
Whether or not the Sena eventually supports a BJP government, the fact is the BJP seems to have changed the rules of engagement when it comes to alliances and coalition governments. We'll keep an eye out on how that story plays out. Hopefully over the weekend we'll get more answers to who's going to form the next government in Maharashtra and the composition of that government. Meanwhile, here's more stories in Nationwide. The Director General of the National Investigation Agency, the NIA, Sharad Kumar, took stock of the progress made in the investigation into the Burdwan blast case. The blast happened on the 2nd of October. It claimed the lives of 2 suspected terrorists of the Jamaatul Mujahideen, Bangladesh. 3 persons, including 2 women, one of them the widow of a suspected terrorist who died in the blast, have so far been interrogated by the NIA. Major airports across the country have been put on high alert following warnings of an impending attack. Reports say the Airport Authority of India in Kolkata received an anonymous letter warning that one each originating from Mumbai and Ahmedabad could be targeted. Security has now been beefed up at all major international airports across the country. Karnataka Chief Minister K. Siddaramaiah has ordered action against the Orchid International School, where a 3-year-old girl student was allegedly raped Tuesday. A criminal case has been filed against the school and an attendant has been detained. He's currently being questioned. Police say the school has been booked for running classes beyond the sanctioned limit. At least 50 homes were gutted when a fire broke out at a slum cluster in Delhi's Shastri Park today. No casualties have been reported. As many as 14 fire tenders were rushed to the spot. The reason behind the fire is yet to be ascertained. We're going to take a short break here in the news tonight. When we come back, in fact, as we take this break, we leave you with visuals of the Raising Day celebrations of the Indo-Tibetan Border Police Force. The force was raised on this day in 1962 and it's presently deployed on the border, guarding duties from Karakoram Pass in Ladakh to Chachepla in Arunachal Pradesh. That's a distance of almost 3,500 kilometers on the India-China border. We're back in 2 minutes. Welcome back. You're watching the news tonight. Some international stories. In China today launched what is called the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. It's tipped to be a huge rival to the Asian Development Bank as well as to the World Bank. India as well as 20 other countries signed an agreement to become founding members of this new institution. However, Australia, Indonesia and South Korea skipped this launch even as the United States expressed its reservations.
Delegates from 21 countries in Beijing's Great Hall of the People to launch the ambitious Asian Infrastructure Development Bank.
推动区域经济发展的正确选择，亚投行的成立将为亚洲地区经济发展投入新的动力，是有利于成员国和本地区乃至全球经济发展的多赢之举。
The bank will have a capital of $100 billion. Its initial subscribed capital is around $50 billion. Voting rights are yet to be decided. AIIB will be headquartered in Beijing and formally established by 2015.
Today is a very important milestone, signing of the MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, in the development of not just the AIIB, but an important milestone in our cooperation to advance the economic development in the Asian region.
Australia, Indonesia and South Korea skipped the launch. Reports suggest that US put pressure on Australia to stay out, while another ally, South Korea, is yet to confirm its presence.
这个金融平台要建立很好的互动交流关系，我们要建立一个包容的、高效的、联合的，促进亚洲。
The AIIB is seen as a challenge to the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank. China will be its largest shareholder, with a stake of up to 50%. India comes next. Incidentally, China was the most keen that India joined the bank. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Meanwhile, staying with Beijing, the Communist Party of China concluded its fourth plenum, announcing a series of legal reforms. But critics question the timing of these reforms, even as Beijing is tightening its grip on Hong Kong. It's been close to a month now after Occupy Hong Kong began. It's now becoming very clear that the government, both in Beijing as well as in Hong Kong, is slowly but surely managing to wear down the students.
The most powerful men of China walking into the Great Hall of the People. On Thursday, China concluded a key meeting of the ruling Communist Party, unleashing a series of legal reforms, but not quite going far enough. Called the fourth plenum, this meeting lasted 4 days and was the first time the ruling party openly talked about judicial independence and limiting the influence of local party officials, all under the umbrella of the rule of law.
全会由中央政治局
China will now enforce the constitution under a constitutional supervision system. It said the Supreme Court of China would also establish circuit courts as a move to boost judicial independence. But the events in faraway Hong Kong have been front and center during the plenum. And today, close to a month after Occupy Central began, the other side is also making its voice heard. Members from the influential financial industry of Hong Kong were out congratulating the police on handling the protests peacefully. But they are worried about the negative impact the continued protests are having on Hong Kong's economy.
怕香港的环境乱，他不来了，我们就怕这个问题最主要。我们是需要稳定，但是不希望乱。
学生有他们的意志，但是你不是这样表达的，对吗？你这样 抗议下去，搞到什么时候呢？对不对？对我们全部没利益的。我们记住，我们是中国人，千万不要乱来。
Also Friday, a political heavyweight spoke for the first time since the occupation began. The city's first chief executive, Tung Chee-hwa, saying categorically that Beijing will not send troops against the protesting students, but he wants them to end the movement now.
文明嘅多元嘅社會解決爭拗方法，唔係喺街頭，而係喺對話。民主嘅社會應該捍衛民主，而非破壞民主。否則，未見到民主已經摧毀咗法治。
But the pressure is mounting on Beijing from around the world. The United Nations Human Rights Committee called on Beijing to ensure universal suffrage in Hong Kong. In response, the Chinese Foreign Ministry had this to say.
我想提醒你注意的是，中国不是公民权利和政治权利国际公约的缔约国实施。那么这个公约不是衡量香港政改的标准。
Next week, it will be a month since Occupy Central began. It's been the biggest political crisis ever since Hong Kong was handed over to mainland China in 1997. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
The way Hong Kong was dealt with, it's a far cry from the days of Tiananmen in 1989. Just shows how the political system has evolved. Meanwhile, the big story that's concerning the United States, of course, is the spread of the Ebola virus. After Texas, it's now made way into America's biggest city, New York. An emergency physician who had just returned to New York City from Liberia has tested positive for the virus. This is the fourth case of Ebola in the United States, and it's the first one inside the Big Apple.
Just a day after US President Barack Obama expressed optimism over efforts to contain the spread of Ebola, a physician in New York City has tested positive for the virus. Dr. Craig Spencer, who works with Doctors Without Borders, had returned to New York City just last week after working with Ebola patients in West Africa. He developed symptoms of the disease on Thursday and was immediately put in isolation at the Bellevue Hospital.
Today, testing confirmed that a patient here in New York City had tested positive for Ebola. The patient is now here in Bellevue Hospital. We want to state at the outset there is no reason for New Yorkers to be alarmed.
Even as authorities confirmed that Spencer was infected with Ebola, he took the subway from Manhattan to Brooklyn on Wednesday night when he went to a bowling alley and then took a taxi back home. But the city health commissioner thinks it is extremely unlikely that members of the public would contract the disease from the city's subway system.
People with Ebola are contagious when they're sick, and what's contagious about them are their body fluids. At the time the doctor was on the subway, he had not had fever. He had no problem with his body fluids in the sense that he had no diarrhea, no vomiting, no blood loss, all of these symptoms that occur when people become much sicker.
While officials in New York said they expected isolated cases of the disease to arrive eventually and had been preparing for it for months, the first case in America's largest city has renewed fears about the spread of the virus.
I'm afraid, that's it. It's just kind of crazy that it's happening on my block, but no, I hope the person's okay.
A first case of Ebola has also been reported from Mali, where a 2-year-old girl has tested positive for the virus. Mali is the 6th country in West Africa to be affected by the worst outbreak on record of the deadly virus, which has killed nearly 4,900 people so far. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And just up north from the United States and Canada, the police have finally released dramatic CCTV footage showing the gunman who entered the country's parliament last week. The footage shows the gunman hijacking a car, breaching parliament security, and then exchanging fire with the guards who were on duty. And all of this just minutes after he shot dead an Army reservist corporal at the War Memorial. The government has so far denied there's any evidence to show that the gunman had links with Islamist extremists. However, the country's Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, has promised to strengthen anti-terror laws even as security remains tight in the capital, Ottawa. More international stories coming up in Global Buzz. It's a big deal. The European Union has managed to reach a landmark deal to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by 2030. The agreement paves the way for a new UN-backed global treaty next year. 28 members agreed to this deal after heated discussions at their summit in Brussels. Environmental groups have welcomed the deal, but they say that members could have done much more. Ahead of the presidential runoff election Sunday in Brazil, President Dilma Rousseff seemed to take a clear lead over opposition candidate Aécio Neves. 2 opinion polls showed Rousseff leading by 6 to 8 percentage points. Rousseff gained ground by reminding voters of rising wages as well as expanding social programs that they've enjoyed over the last 12 years of Workers' Party rule. The Syrian army has managed to recapture the strategic town of Morek. That's 9 months after it was seized by rebels and Al-Qaeda affiliates. The Syrian ground forces, backed by airstrikes, managed to recapture this town after fierce battles since Wednesday night. There were no reports on the number of casualties. US President Barack Obama has nominated Indian-American Azita Raji as the US ambassador to Sweden. Raji is a California-based former investment banker. She served as National Vice Chair of Finance for Obama's presidential campaign in 2012. She helped raise more than $500,000 for the Obama campaign. 92-year-old leader of the Bangladeshi Islamist Party, Ghulam Azam, died in jail. He was sentenced last July to 90 years in prison for crimes during the 1971 war with Pakistan. The former leader of the Jamaat-e-Islami suffered cardiac failure shortly before midnight. Some sports stories now, and it's a huge setback for Gurunath Meyyappan. According to a private English news channel, the team owner of Chennai Super Kings, Meyyappan's voice sample has now been confirmed in a tapped conversation. Now, reports suggest that the Central Forensic Sciences Laboratory has confirmed the voices of Meyyappan along with Vindu Dara Singh and other accused in the IPL spot-fixing case. They've managed to corroborate this with the intercepted voices of the arrested. The Mudgal panel, which is probing the spot-fixing scandal, will submit its final report to the Supreme Court by the end of this month. The next hearing in this case is scheduled for the 10th of November. Meyyappan, who also happens to be the son-in-law of ICC chief N. Srinivasan, had been charge-sheeted in this case. He was accused of passing on information to bookies as well as placing bets on IPL matches.
Time has come when obviously not only people like Meyappans should be shown the door and the law should now really catch on to him, and if he's done something illegal and if there are certain acts of indiscretion, acts of omission and commission which are illegal acts which have been committed, then law must catch up with Mr. Meyappan.
मयप्पन को इसलिए हम ज्यादा बात करते हैं क्योंकि उनका सीधा रिश्ता श्रीनिवासन से, उनके दामाद हैं। इसके अलावा भी बहुत सारे लोग हैं, तो केवल एक ही नाम पर नहीं, साथ में लिफाफे में 12 नाम गए जो हम लोगों ने सुना है। तो वक्त आने पे मैं यही चाहता हूं कि उचित न्याय हो।
मैं सुप्रीम कोर्ट में जोर से इस चीज को उठाऊंगा कि इन लोगों के ऊपर कड़ी से कड़ी दफा में मुकदमा दर्ज करने का आदेश माननीय सर्वोच्च न्यायालय करे। जरूरत पड़े तो अगर इनके ऊपर देशद्रोह का भी मुकदमा चलाया जाए, ऐसा मेरी मांग रहेगी।
And finally, more sports news in Sports Beat. The Indian Olympic Association will meet sports ministry officials on the 28th of this month to discuss boxer Sarita Devi's suspension. The move comes after Sports Minister Sarbananda Sonowal instructed the association to take up the issue with the International Boxing Association. Indian shuttler Parupalli Kashyap stunned world number 9 Tian Ho-wei 21-19, 21-18 in the pre-quarters of the French Open Super Series. Kashyap is a Commonwealth Games champion. He got off to a steady start, taking a 5-1 lead before Ho-wei fought back to equalize 7-7. In tennis, top seed Roger Federer fought back from being a set down before beating Denis Istomin 3-6, 6-3, 6-4 to reach the quarterfinals of the Swiss Indoors. Federer is looking for his 6th Swiss Indoors title after finishing runner-up in the last 2 editions. He now faces 5th seed Grigor Dimitrov after the Bulgarian eased past Vasek Popsil of Canada 6-2, 6-2. And finally, as we wrap up, ISRO's Mars Orbiter mission has completed a month orbiting the red planet. We leave you with some of the most memorable moments from the journey so far. Enjoy this, and we'll catch you again tomorrow night, same time, for another edition of News Tonight. Good night.
1 मिनट की दूरी और